Welcome back to our GitKraken workshop series. You're watching Unblocking Code Collaboration with GitKraken's Code Suggest and Launchpad. In case you've missed any of our past workshops, check out the link to the playlist below. We have all the recordings available to you right there. All right, without further ado, let's get into the workshop.
So yeah, Jonathan might not be able to talk, but I can be his voice, and we'll just kind of go from there. So thanks for joining, everyone. Sorry about the slight delay. We'll get right into this. We have some demos that we want to show you, but I just wanted to do a kind of quick highlight of what we're doing, right? We're talking about code collaboration and two new features that we have out. One called Code Suggest, which is brand new. One that is called Launchpad, which was previously known as Focus. And really what this is all about is trying to improve developer experience by unblocking teams. So if we go on to the next slide. Oh, this is us. This is me. I'm Justin Roberts. I'm a senior product director here at GitKraken. I just gave my backstory so you know a little bit more about me. Jonathan has also been at the company for a really long time, knows a lot about all of our products, and is typically the voice and face of GitKraken Desktop. We're also joined by Melise here, who's helping to man the chat. He's kind of the voice and face of GitLens. So if you've seen any of those faces around, you've probably seen them on YouTube videos or on talks. But really happy to have all of you here joining us, and we're going to dive right in. So we talk about developer experience and shortened to DevEx. And I hope that a lot of you have heard about this. And if you haven't, we'll do a kind of a really quick overview of what that is. Talk about what some of the common PR pain points that we hear that teams have, that we even have here internally, and how Launchpad and Code Suggest help to solve those. And then if we have a little bit of time, we'll do some Q&A. So if you haven't seen yet, earlier this month, we announced a really big release that saw version 10 of GitKraken Desktop come out, version 15 of GitLens. We have a new CLI. We introduced a browser extension. We introduced GitKraken.dev on the browser, and all of these tools are really just part of a platform that we're building to help developers work better. So if you haven't tried any of those, I would definitely suggest going and trying, and I'll give you kind of a teaser as we get into the demo here of where some of the value of these features like Launchpad and Code Suggest will show up there. But it's really about trying to meet developers wherever they are, having the tools that we're building at GitKraken in any of those surfaces. Some devs might only work in a terminal, some might only work in VS Code, or they don't work in VS Code and they only work in some other IDE. But everyone uses a browser, everyone uses a mobile phone typically, so we're trying to just make sure that we have coverage across all of those surfaces. So when we talk about developer experience, there's really kind of three things that we're trying to do by improving the developer experience. It's about shortening the feedback loops, the time between every task that you have to do, every time you need someone else to help you with something, to review a PR, to help pair with code. Those are all loops that require feedback from some other person. And the shorter you can make those loops, the faster you can get through the work, the better you feel about the place that you ended your day at. Reducing cognitive load is really just about the overall kind of load that you have in trying to do work, right? If you have to think a lot about all these different things, if you have poor documentation, if you can't find your way through the code base, it's going to take a long time to get things done. And really, these are just trying to serve maintaining flow state. So we all want to try to stay as much as possible in what we call our flow state. This is the place where we're really doing intense, thinking and working on things and trying to solve the problems that we want to be working on, not, doing things like getting Slack messages and getting messages about PRs and going into meetings. So the developer experience can kind of be boiled down into these three things. And what we're going to be talking about today is mostly around shortening feedback loops and kind of maintaining that flow state around pull requests. So if we go on to the next slide, some of the challenges that we hear about, and you've likely had these challenges yourself, is that pull requests, there's delays in collaboration. You invite someone to review your PR, they might not see that message for a couple of hours or a day. And those cause delays in getting pull requests merged in, right? Conflicts are another thing. If a PR starts to have conflicts, so now you have to go resolve that conflict before you can move on. Fragmented visibility is just about, like, you have multiple people involved in any kind of a process. Every point in that process is going to be something that can take up time and cause that thing to go slower. And obviously there's context switching, right? You've got your PRs in a hosting service, you've got your IDE, you've got your Git client, you've got all these places that you're working. The more you have to switch around, the more those feedback loops start to lengthen out and the longer it takes you to get things done. So what we're going to talk about today, if you go on to the next slide, is how Launchpad and Code Suggest can help to solve these. So really, we're talking about trying to do a better job of reviewing and having a more flexible review process with Code Suggest, using tools like Launchpad to get better visibility on what PRs are out there, kind of what the state they're in, and keep you from having to switch around a bunch to kind of get those things done. So let's just go into the demo. I think we're set up here to do a demo. Rather just show you what we're talking about than look at bullet points. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we're going to take a look at what I'm talking about here. So you should be seeing GitKraken right now. If you haven't seen it, if you use Focus View in the past, or if you have seen the Launchpad, we now have a tab up here for Launchpad in the GitKraken desktop. And if you open that, that is going to take you into Launchpad. And Launchpad's goal here is to aggregate information about your pull requests and your issues that are all associated with the work that you're doing. And it's really about aggregating that information across multiple repositories. So instead of having to dive into each repo to see which PRs are part of that repo, this uses our hosting integrations to pull that information into one place. So you can see that across all of the repos that I have connected to GitHub, I have, and these are obviously demos, so don't yell at me for having all of these test PRs that are ready to merge, but it's showing me that I have 6 that are ready to merge. I have 7 that have unassigned reviewers. These are things that I would want to go take care of so that I can unblock my team, so that I can get this PR moving on into the next stage. And if there's no assigned reviewers, that's going to keep that PR from progressing. So we try to take these PRs in and categorize them by really common categories that would help you understand what needs to be done. If I need to resolve conflicts on some, I should go do that. If they need my review, someone else has requested a review from me, this is really the personal view, and you'll see that I'm in the personal view over here of all of the PRs that are important to me and what state they're in, so that I can see what those are and then take action on those. And you'll see on the right side, we have the calls to action for each status. So if these are ready to merge, I could just initiate that merge here and merge that pull request using the GitHub API without having to jump out and go to GitHub to do that. So the scenario that we're going to test here with Launchpad is, Jonathan has created a pull request, and he's assigned me as a reviewer. So I want to show you a little bit about how that shows up in Launchpad, and then how we can use our new feature, Code Suggest, to do a more flexible review and suggestion on that than you might typically be able to do in GitHub, where in GitHub, when you want to make suggestions on code, you have to kind of go in and use their little text box and write in the text box or in some markdown the code that you might want them to change. And that's helpful if you have a one-line change. But if there's a bigger change, or if they put a function in the wrong file, GitHub isn't really going to allow you to make a suggestion on a file that wasn't included in the original PR. So Code Suggest is going to provide a way to do that. The other main challenge with reviewing PRs and making suggestions is that if you do go into your IDE to write code and to make suggestions, and you push that code up to the remote, well, it's not really a suggestion at that point. You've kind of written that to the history of the repository. And so what we wanted to find is a way that would let people have more flexibility in suggesting code changes to a PR, and give the author of that PR the agency to say, like, yes, I do want to accept that, or I don't want to accept those changes. And so we're going to show you what that looks like in Code Suggest. What I do want to show really quick in Launchpad before we get there is we have a new team kind of mode in Launchpad. And what that is it's letting you go in to your Launchpad and pick a workspace. If you haven't used workspaces before, workspaces are our way of grouping repositories together. And I'm going to go into this GitKraken Help Center workspace. And this workspace contains a bunch of repos that we use for maintaining our Help Center and our documentation. And you can see that now it's not just showing me my personal information, it's showing me all of the people on this team and inside of this workspace that have pull requests. So if I was a team lead or an engineering manager, I could come in here and see like, what is the status of all the PRs on this team that are in this workspace? When was the last time these were updated? Kind of what's the state that these are in? So just wanted to show that really quickly. If any of you out there are engineering managers or team leads, the team version of the Launchpad is something that we're developing to cater to that use case. Maybe you might want to use this as a stand-up tool to kind of show the state of all the PRs. We're really working to make this valuable for that use case. But what I'm trying to find is a PR that was assigned to me from Jonathan. So I'm going to switch back into my personal Launchpad. You can see that I'm still filtered by that GitKraken Help Center. And there is one thing that needs my review. So I can really easily see that, hey, there's this review that I have that Jonathan requested me to go check out. So rather than jumping out into GitHub, I can review this pull request right now inside of GitKraken. And when I click this, it's going to take me into the repository. It's going to put me into review mode, which if you haven't used this yet in GitKraken Desktop, it's really valuable. We've centered a lot of the UI for pull requests and reviewing pull requests around showing you just that information. So you'll see that, I'm in this branch. This branch has this PR associated with it, and I'm now reviewing that PR. So it's showing me the changes, the kind of combined changes across everything in this PR that Jonathan has. So I can click through these files and review them. It's okay, looks like he removed some information about bug fixes. And then he wrote something here about stashing on the cloud, but something that I noticed is that he wrote it in this cherry pick file. So really this should be in our stashing file. So I'm going to suggest that he change this. Now, if I was in GitHub and I wanted to do this, I would have to go write a note in the code and say like, hey, this whole block should actually be in this other file. And then Jonathan would have to get that message and then go back and make that change. Well, with code suggestions, we can just do that right here. So I'm going to edit this file, and I'm going to say all of this stuff about stashing on the cloud actually shouldn't be here. So I'm going to save those changes. So now I'm saying, okay, this file is going to change to do that. And you can see there is no file over here for stashing. So I can use my command palette here in GitKraken Desktop. And I'm going to edit a file, and I'm going to look for stashing. There's that file. So this is the file that those changes actually should have gone into. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to paste that stash on the cloud set right there and save those changes. So I'm in review mode. I've made some changes, and GitKraken is kind of remembering all of those file changes. And down here, this button is saying, hey, suggest those 2 file changes to this PR. So I'm going to click that, and what it's going to do is it's going to show me the combination of all those changes. So you can see that in the cherry pick file, I removed all of those changes. In the stashing file, I added all those changes. And it's going to create a description here, and it will let me even add something here. So if I wanted to say like, move the stashing details into stashing file. So what this is going to do is it's going to package these up into a cloud patch essentially that gets sent to Jonathan. So I'm going to send these. It says it's sent successfully. I can copy the link if I wanted to send that link directly to Jonathan and have him go view it. But at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Jonathan, and I'm going to let him show you what that looks like on the other side. And I'm going to try to be his voice while he walks through this. All right. So Jonathan is now in his GitKraken Desktop, and he's on this branch. He has that PR. You can see that that PR is listed there for this branch. And if he clicks it, it's going to take him into the PR view inside of GitKraken Desktop. So he can actually see the comments that are coming through from GitHub. And there's a comment on there that you can see where I said, move the stashing details into the stashing file. So if he clicks that code suggestion link, it's going to open that up in gitkraken.dev. Now, he could have opened this in GitKraken Desktop, but we want to show you what this looks like, because if you send this to someone who doesn't have GitKraken, they're not using GitKraken Desktop, they're not using GitLens in VS Code, and they just click this link from GitHub, it's going to open it in gitkraken.dev. And in gitkraken.dev, we have this really rich diffing experience where now Jonathan, who might not even be a GitKraken user, can see, hey, Justin suggested some changes. He left this note here, and here are the changes for each of the files that he suggested to me. So Jonathan can review those changes, see those diffs inside of the browser. And I'm just going to assume, Jonathan, that you're good with these changes because you can't talk. So we're going to go ahead and just accept these. So what's happening is down on the bottom left, it's essentially a commit panel. It's saying, Jonathan is choosing to accept these changes, and he's going to commit these and push these to the repo, rather than me, Justin, the reviewer, making these changes and pushing them to the repo for him. So he's going to write a commit message, write in some details on that commit message. And when he's ready, he can commit these suggestions. And what it's actually going to do is use GitHub's API to commit that change to that branch on GitHub. So if he went back to GitHub, he should see that that change was committed. And there it is. So that's a really quick overview of kind of how Launchpad is designed to help you find the things that you need to do related to pull requests, and then how Code Suggest is a much more powerful, flexible way to review code and to suggest changes on that code outside of GitHub, keeping you kind of in context wherever you are. Now, the Code Suggest will work inside of GitKraken Desktop. It will also work inside of GitLens if you use GitLens. And we even have some of that functionality in the GitKraken CLI if you choose to use the CLI. So we've got about 6 minutes left. I don't know if we want to take questions, if there's anything else that anyone would like to see. Is Malise still with us?
Yep, I'm still here. So it looks like we got some great questions in the Q&A over here. So let's start with the first one. Let's go with Daniel Speck. I'm going to throw it up on the screen here so you can see it. Let's see. Are you able to see that?
Have we ever worked with CodeStream? We haven't worked with it, but we are very familiar with, kind of how it functions. Love to see a GitKraken code chat. Yeah, this is something that's come up a lot of times in discussions here in the office and with other customers. It's interesting, one of our CTO actually worked at CodeStream, and some of the feedback that we get about this kind of feature set, like this ability to kind of notate code and like leave comments on code, is that like theoretically it sounds like what people want, but then it kind of atrophies, right? Like these code comments kind of get left behind in code. It kind of starts to create noise. So we are curious about like the concept of it and what we can do to help developers talk about code. And it's something that we just had conversations with the dev team about last week. So any thoughts or feedback where you've either used tools that have been really helpful or tools that haven't been helpful and what you would prefer that they do, we'd love to hear that feedback, because it's something that we're talking about a lot around developers collaborating better around code and really having kind of discussions around code and how that might work. So yes, like we have heard about CodeStream. It's something that we think about a lot, but we recognize some of the shortfalls with it that we're trying to think through and see if there's other ways that we can handle those problems.
Got it. Awesome. It looks like we got another question from Kim Kraft. Let me throw that up.
Not yet compatible or integrate. It should be. Oh, I mean, it should be working with Bitbucket Cloud. I'd have to check on that and just make sure. Yeah, I have to get back to you on that one. It should be working with all of our hosting service providers, but I may be mistaken on that. I see it on mine, so it should be there. If you try Launchpad, you should see an integration for Bitbucket Cloud on there. Can we work with Azure DevOps PRs? Yes, we can. It also connects with Azure DevOps. So if you're using the Azure DevOps connection, we will pull in PRs and issues from Azure DevOps, or tasks, I think is what they're called in Azure. way to comment on a line so as we can do in GitHub. No, but that is the kind of next thing on our plate for Code Suggest, is we realize that there is a need to still leave comments on the code. So that's the thing that we're going to be talking about next. Good question.
We got one from Craig.
Is integration with Linear for issues on the roadmap? We are trying to get that in. You know, it's something that we hear a lot from users. And so it's actually the one that comes up the most. So it's definitely on our minds. And, you know, we just had a lot of talks last week about where we want to be spending our time. And Linear does keep coming up. Our next step here is to just kind of dive into Linear's API and see how easy it is to kind of weave them into our existing integration ecosystem. But if I had to bet, that would be the next one that we do if we continue to expand our integrations.
And
any plans for AI integrations in order to suggest comments? We're always thinking about AI. We have AI code or commit message generation inside of GKD, inside of the desktop, and inside of GitLens. GitLens even has a little bit more with the ability to kind of explain code. So yes, anywhere that we can leverage those existing AI connections that we have, if you've got something wired up to your OpenAI API, or in GitLens, I think they support Anthropic and Gemini now. Yep. So yes, anywhere that we can leverage those in code suggestions, we're still in early stages on code suggestions. So any suggestions that you have for, what might be helpful and what you're looking for would help. AI is definitely something that makes sense in that place, because if you're going to suggest something, it would be really easy to just kind of click a button and let it get started for you, and then accept those yourself and then suggest those to that person.
Yeah. And just a side note on that, I think in the latest release of GitLens coming up sometime next month, we're looking at GitHub Copilot too. So, yeah. Looks like we got another question.
Can you limit the tokens being sent to OpenAI? It's getting expensive. We don't have any of that functionality built in. I would assume that you could do that on OpenAI's end, but if they don't, and that's a concern, it's something that we can definitely consider, right? If you say, I don't want GitKraken to send more than, X number of requests per month or whatever, it's something that we could think about. I would expect that limitation would be on OpenAI's API, but good question, something we can look into if that's a concern. Any plans for closer integration with Unreal Engine 5? In what way, I guess, would be my question there. Is this in kind of like how the projects are structured in Unreal and how that works? Is this more around like LFS? Not sure exactly what that question is for.
Yeah, that's a great question. All right, well, it looks like we are at time. Carlos, don't know if you're typing up a response to Justin's question. We'll give you 20 seconds here. But Justin, thanks for going through everything. I think Jonathan had to drop, or he might be hiding himself from the mic right now. But thanks, everybody, for sticking around through the technical difficulties and everything. There's Jonathan. Big smile. Nice. All right. Well, everyone, thanks again for joining this workshop. Keep an eye out for the next upcoming workshop in June, which will be a GitLens workshop. And we are going to be doing something very cool with the new Launchpad functionality that dropped across the different GitLens surfaces, GitKraken desktop. We'll even take a look at Code Suggest, which is an awesome feature as well that we touched on a little bit here today. So, yeah. Stay tuned, and if you want a copy of this recording, make sure to check your email. It will be emailed out to everyone here. And if you want to see previous workshops, they'll also be on the YouTube channel under a playlist called Workshops. And real quick, Justin, Carlos did get back. He said something like an add-on directly in the engine.
Yeah, I mean, we're always considering where we might expand out to reach into other platforms. We're currently looking at JetBrains extension for GitLens. So, if there are places that make sense that there are not enough devs that would want some of this functionality, like we're keeping our eyes open for those opportunities. So thanks for adding that one to the list.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks, everyone. We'll see you at the next workshop.
Thanks, everyone.